long ago, when the goddess Nuwa was repairing the sky. She melted down a great quantity of rock into 36,501 large building blocks. One single block was left unused. It lay at the foot of Green Sickness Peak and possessed magic powers. It could grow or shrink to any size it wanted. Later, a Buddhist monk and a Taoist priest brought this stone into the world of mortals, where, in time, it grew into one of the undisputed classics of Chinese literature, The Story of the Stone, also known as A Dream of Red Mansions. That laid-aside stone stands for both the protagonist of the novel, Jia Baoyu, and the author himself, Cao Xueqin.
In Chapter 70 of A Dream of Red Mansions, Cao Xueqin elaborated on the scene in which Jia Baoyu flies kites with his cousins. As well as helping readers understand Chinese people's kite-flying activities in the early Qing dynasty, this passage is also a lament on the part of the author regarding the fading of beautiful things. For uselessness, the world's prize he might bear, his gracelessness in history has no peer. Such are the words used to describe Jia Baoyu, the hero of the novel. As his cousin Xiang Yun says, he likes to be with the girls. In fact, Jia Baoyu is a male figure unprecedented in the history of Chinese literature.
风筝放到顶之后啊，他要剪，然后一剪呢，就看到剩下一个鸡蛋那么小，最后剩下一个豆子这么小，不见了。这个时候呢，接下来展现了贾宝玉的一句话，你必须看早期抄本的时候才看得到。他说：“这个风筝啊，不晓得会落到哪里去。如果是在大街上哈，有孩子捡去玩的话，那就没关系；如果是落到那个荒郊野岭哈，没有人陪伴他的话，我替他寂寞。”啊，接下来他说，他告诉林黛玉说，须得再放一个上去陪他。好，这就是贾宝玉。那我从某种角度上面相信，这是曹雪芹的一种个性的演化，也就是说，他是一个非常温暖的，非常付出感情的。
At the other end of the line, connected directly with Jia Baoyu, is the great novelist himself. It was in the days when he was writing the novel at the foot of the fragrant hills in Beijing. In the middle of winter, Yu Jinglian, an old friend of Cao Xueqin, came to visit. The veteran had retired from the army with a crippled leg and was only able to make a living by selling his paintings. But having failed to sell them for a good price, Yu Jinglian confessed to Cao Xueqin, trying to swallow back his tears, that his children had been starving for 3 days and there was nothing he could do to put bread on the table for his family. Though on a tight budget himself, Cao Xueqin did not hesitate to draw on all his savings and offer support to a friend in need. Furthermore, he insisted that Yu Jinglian stay for the night and that he would borrow some money on the man's behalf in the morning. That night, struggling to sleep, Yu Jinglian mentioned that some lord in the city was willing to pay several dozen taels of silver just for a kite. The amount he was offering would be enough to cover the living expenses of his family for an entire year. Upon hearing that, Cao Xueqin got off his bed in excitement and offered to teach his friend how to make a kite. Fortunately, Cao Xueqin had both bamboo sticks and paper available in his humble home. More than that, he was also quite a good painter in his own right. So the two men spent the night painting and binding sticks. Come dawn, they'd managed to assemble several beautiful kites. Although in deep doubt, Yu Jinglian went home with the money and food Cao Xueqin had given him, along with the kites. Days before the Chinese New Year, Yu Jinglian visited Cao Xueqin once again. Only this time, he was leading a donkey, fully loaded with chicken, ducks, vegetables, and a jar of good wine. The kites Cao Xueqin had helped him make had been all sold at a good price. Now they could both look forward to a luscious new year. Over the succeeding few years, Yu Jinglian's name became well known in the kite world of Beijing. Yet, from time to time, he would still visit Cao Xueqin for new kite designs.
曹雪芹一看了这个非常高兴啊，这就是今天说的话，授人以鱼不如授人以技呀。打鱼的这种技术啊，教了他手艺了，他能谋生了，所以他说：“将以为今之有废技，而无告者，谋其有自养之道也。”这个就是说，让残疾人。有病的人，而且无门申诉的人有自养之道啊，这种思想萌发了他要写非遗斋纪稿。
The collective essays on crafts for the disabled compiled by Cao Xueqin includes 8 volumes themed on seal carving and making, kite making, weaving, porcelain making, knitting and darning, printing and dyeing, garden design and cooking. Back in the days of Qing dynasty China, even the greatest rulers did not concern themselves with protecting the livelihoods of the disabled. Cao Xueqin's efforts testify not just to his knowledge, but also his compassionate heart. A codex of the collective essays on crafts for the disabled emerged in Beijing in the 1940s. Kong Xiangzi, then student of the National Peiping Art School, was allowed to copy several dozen pages. The original codex was taken away to Japan before finally vanishing.
曹雪芹在我们的心目中，他是一个第一流的小说家，但是这一套书让我们看到另外一个面向，他是一个人道主义者，帮助这一个弱势族群。
Today, in a corner of the Beijing Botanical Garden, there's a small dwelling in front of which stands a crooked ancient Chinese scholar tree. Legend has it that this was where Cao Xueqin wrote A Dream of Red Mansions. In the last century, people found a poem on the wall in the study of this residence that reads, "Those who keep distance from the rich but befriend the poor for courtesy are in the minority. Those who alienate families and friends for wealth are in the majority." It was dedicated to the host of the house by Ao Bi, a friend of Cao Xueqin. This indirectly confirms the legend that had circulated throughout the area for nearly 3 centuries.
这棵树在这个地区是很有名的一棵树，人们都管它叫韦伯树。1984年，四王堡村有个老太太叫任淑珍，亲自跟我说，在37年，她的奶奶跟她说贾宝院就住在村西边整白旗的微博树那。我问那是贾宝院是谁？他说贾宝院就是曹雪芹呐。他这个传说很符合自传说了。
The path that leads from Cao Xueqin's residence to the depths of the hills has been named the Cao Xueqin Trail. It was on this trail that Cao Xueqin would walk, carrying a medicine box on his back, on his way to offer medical services to locals, or just strolling aimlessly pondering over the writing of A Dream of Red Mansions. From time to time, the scenery along the trail would become his source of inspiration. This giant crescent rock that has been here for centuries of time is said to be the prototype of the sky-mending stone of Niuwa and the magic jade in the novel. And this rock-penetrating Chinese tujia might have led him to think of a bond of old made by stone and flower. Cao Xueqin and his wife had some happy days of their own after their baby was born. Despite the financial problem the family was facing, the newborn added some spice to Cao Xueqin's life in middle age. However, it was a period of happiness that proved fleeting.
As the hero of the novel, Zhao Baoyu is unusually mischievous, yet his mind is as sharp as a needle, and it's unlikely to find 1 in 100 to match him.
有人说你用最简洁的语言评价贾宝玉，我说呢很难用最简洁的语言评价，因为这个人物呢太丰满了。但是你一定要我回答，我说就2个词：情真、率真。那么在贾宝玉身上出现的那种真善美，是非常令人感动的。
As the story goes, one day a few girls go to collect flowers in the garden and begin playing Match My Flower, but soon they start arguing about a species of orchid and end up in a fight, during which one of the girls, Caltrop, spoils her new skirt in a muddy puddle. At this point, Baoyu arrives and finds out Caltrop's plight. I'm sure the Xues could afford to spoil 100 skirts like this one every day, he said. But that's not the point. Aunt Xue is a bit inclined to nag. I've often heard her complaining that you are extravagant and a bad manager and don't know how to look after things properly and so forth. I'm afraid if she gets to see it, you are going to have rather a lot of that sort of thing to listen to. As it turns out, what Bao Yu says is exactly what Caltrop's been thinking. After getting Caltrop's consent, Bao Yu has his chief maid, Aroma, prepare her skirt that is tailored the same way for Caltrop to change into. Upon parting ways, Caltrop reminds Bao Yu, "You won't ever tell your cousin Pan about this, will you?" "What? Put my head inside the mouth of a tiger?" said Bao Yu, laughing. "You must think I'm crazy." One day, Grandma Jia invites Granny Liu to have tea at Green Bower Hermitage. And Bao Yu hears Adamantina order the teacup used by Granny Liu to be left outside. And he understands immediately. It's because Granny Liu has drunk from it, and in Adamantina's eyes, the cup is now contaminated. He then suggests Adamantina give the cup to Granny Liu, saying, "She's very poor, and if she sold it, she could probably live for quite a long while on the proceeds." Adamantina agrees. Later, Bao Yu finds a junior maid of Grandma Jia's and entrusts the cup to her, saying, "When Granny Liu goes, see that she takes this cup with her, will you?"
你比如他说怡红院他们那个给贾宝玉做寿啊，这个他们都是一些丫头啊，而贾宝玉是主子啊，他们出钱给贾宝玉做寿，然后大家在一起啊喝酒啊，什么猜拳啦、唱小曲啦，然后最后横七竖八的睡在一地啊，这完全是违反了当时的那个规矩，这就是西方讲的狂欢节。狂欢节是什么意思呢？没有等级的差别，大家都是平等的。
儒家思想比较强的时候呢，都是为了社会、为了家庭、为了父母、为了他们的妻小啊，他们来就自己要努力下来，然后拿到一个好的官呐，这样的话就生活好。他是偏不要功名的，他是要的是真情，啊，这个是当年可以说是叛逆的性格嘛。所以呢，就中国文艺发展史上的，也是贾宝玉的出现是可以说是比较重要的一个标志。
In this familiarity and friendship he develops, regardless of the social status of the people, is an idea which developed around the same time in Europe with the Enlightenment movement. So the novel very well describes.
In chapter 33, Jia Baoyu is seriously beaten due to a groundless imputation and his relationship with an actor. Refusing to hear the remonstrations of the literary gentleman present, Jia Zheng, his father, says, "Now, when things have come to this pass, you intercede for him. I suppose you would like me to wait until he commits parricide or worse. Would you still intercede for him then?" Fortunately, Baoyu's mother and grandmother arrive and save the boy from being beaten to death. That night, Lin Dayu pays Baoyu a visit and says in tears, "I suppose you'll change now." Baoyu gives a long sigh and replies, "Don't worry, I shan't change. People like that are worth dying for. I wouldn't change if he killed me." As the story develops, Skybright, along with her honest character, is stymied by the suppressive and feudal Jia family, by then in its death throes. Baoyu is forced to marry Shui Baochai, leading to the perishing of the heartbroken Dayu. and Bao Yu, disappointed and agonized, becomes a provincial graduate as his family wishes before leaving home to become a monk.
对他父母，他还他们一个功名，考了举人，中举了。对他妻子还留给他一个儿子，他腹中宝钗怀了他的儿子以后叫贾贵，给他儿子以后要贾家整个要兴起来，贾家整个宝钗要担负的。袭人呢，跟他夙缘最深的是，对吧？留给他个丈夫，蒋玉菡。别忘了这个蒋玉菡是演员。所以他在俗世里边替宝玉演完这出戏。
这从古至今的哲学家、文学家都在思考的问题，就是人生终极意义，人活在世界上有什么意义？那么一部石头记，我认为它的价值就在于用这块石头的亲见亲闻，亲见亲闻是一个书里头的话，亲见亲闻说明在现实人生中确实存在着有情之天下。即便是短暂的，即便是悲剧，但是这说明人生是有价值的。这个是我认为《红楼梦》的是一部石头记的根本价值之所在。人生是有意义的。
In the final chapter, Jia Zheng arrives in Nanjing with the coffins of his mother, Da Yu, and other Jia family members to inter them. On his return journey, he moors in a quiet, lonely stretch of the canal, and suddenly he sees, on deck, in the very entrance to his cabin and silhouetted dimly against the snow, the figure of a man with shaven head and bare feet, wrapped in a large cape made of crimson felt. The figure kneels down and bows to Jia Zheng, who hurries out on deck, intending to raise him up and ask him his name. The man, having bowed 4 times and now standing upright, presses his palms together in monkish greeting. Jia Zheng is about to reciprocate with a respectful bow of the head when he looks into the man's eyes and with a sudden shock recognizes him as Bao Yu. "Are you not my son?" he asks. The man is silent, and an expression that seems to contain both joy and sorrow plays on his face. Before Bao Yu can reply, a Buddhist monk and a Taoist appear on the deck, and holding him between them, they say, "Come, your earthly karma is complete. Tarry no longer." The 3 of them mount the bank and stride off into the snow. Jia Zheng goes chasing after them along the slippery track, but somehow they always remain just out of reach. He hears one of them singing some sort of a song. "On green sickness peak I dwell, in the cosmic void I roam. Who will pass over? Who will go with me? Who will explore the supremely ineffable, vastly mysterious wilderness to which I return?"
One autumn day, at noon in 1761, Cao Xueqin, in the process of writing, was interrupted by bustling noises outside. It turned out that his students, the brothers of Dun Min and Dun Cheng, had come to visit him. These 2 brothers of royal descent had always respected their teacher for his unyielding character. Dun Cheng even wrote a poem paying tribute to Cao Xueqin. "Rely not on the powers, write instead in the village of yellow leaves." The village of yellow leaves, in this instance, symbolizes the fragrant hills in Beijing during autumn. The scenic fragrant hill in autumn has been a subject that many Chinese poets other than Dun Cheng have dealt with. After some small talk, their topic switched to the novel Cao Xueqin had been writing and the characters in it. By this point, the manuscripts of the novel had been circulating through the literary circles of Beijing. Whenever a friend visited and asked to read the manuscripts, Cao Xueqin was happy to lend them. As a result, although the novel had been finished and was being revised, the manuscripts were rarely complete, scattered among Cao Xueqin's friends. The brothers didn't leave until the sun was going down. Stepping on the narrow path, covered in red and yellow leaves, they headed back towards the city. Duncheng wrote a poem about this visit and dedicated it to Cao Xueqin. Covering the trail and faded is the daisy. On porridge and in debt lives the family. Dilapidated and leaking is the dwelling. Only in dreams continues his house's glory. He treats his guests to brews despite meager wages. To the West Hills in the afterglow, he toasts daily. As the legend goes, an old lady was living alone in the neighborhood, and although having little himself, Cao Xueqin often lent her a helping hand, collecting herbs to treat her ailments. The intelligent and outgoing old lady brought a lot of laughter to Cao Xueqin. And she's thought to be the model for the clever Granny Liu in A Dream of Red Mansions. In the eyes of his fellow villagers, Cao Xueqin was a learned scholar and a doctor who provided free treatment and effective remedies. Whilst for Cao Xueqin, he got to learn about the lives of the commoners and gain a grassroots perspective that benefited the writing of his novel.
香山地区的老百姓对曹雪芹有着许多的美妙的传说，比如说香山整白旗，再早有位教育家叫赵东华。 他是光绪年间的人，他曾经向他的儿子赵思成讲过，说曹雪芹在整白旗啊种芹菜，干嘛呢？当药材。因为芹菜这种药材治什么？治骨症，也就是大肚子症。曹雪芹呢用芹菜做药材，去救治当地的 有病的贫穷的老百姓。
As the author wrote in his novel, Cao Xueqin, in his nostalgia studio, worked on it for 10 years, in the course of which he rewrote it no less than 5 times. It took Cao Xueqin about 3 years to finish the first draft of the novel, and a long time to review and revise it afterwards. It was this painstaking attention to revision that elevated the novel to a work of genius.
后来看张爱玲或等等的这些专家学者，他们指出《红楼梦》里面的这些人物是不断的演绎出来的， 好，就是说不断的发展出来，就是各种版本又多一点，再多一点。前面那个版本还没看到晴雯，晴雯就出来，下一个版本，金钏。好，它都是在后边的版本再加进来的。那可能就是说，他生活越来越丰富，思考越来越多。哎，生活中还有谁，他把它写进来。
Fate seems to have been unfair to Cao Xueqin in actual real life, yet kind to him from a literary point of view. It was that favour that enabled him to give us an authentic portrayal of 18th century China in A Dream of Red Mansions. Not only is the novel the crown jewel of Chinese literature, but also it is the greatest achievement ever of traditional Chinese philosophy.
他是汉人，他也是满人，汉文化、满文化他都有。他是南方人，他也在北方这个写成的书，金陵姑苏。江南的那种婉约缠绵的那种的风格美学，它有北京那种辽阔苍茫啊，那种的景象，它也有，所以他的文化构成很复杂的这个人。
那么汤显祖呢，他是追求有情是天下。曹雪芹啊，有一点跟汤显祖不一样，汤显祖认为现实世界里头没有有情是天下，有法治天下嘛，而曹雪芹认为他在现实世界里头存在着有情是天下。那么曹雪芹这个思想呢，情的思想呢，继承了发扬了汤显祖的这个情的这个思想，我认为在文学史上，在思想史上也很有价值。
One early morning in fall in 1762, Dun Cheng came to visit his brother Dun Min at Taiping Lake in Beijing. Upon entering his residence, Dun Cheng found Cao Xueqin, who then told Dun Cheng that he had arrived the previous evening and drunk with Dun Min. By then, Dun Min was still asleep, but Cao Xueqin was up craving for more wine. Dun Cheng immediately took his teacher to a tavern. However, when getting in, both of them realized they had no money. So, without hesitating, Dun Cheng took off his saber from his waist as a pledge. There they enjoyed themselves, drinking and declaiming with gusto. After savouring the wine, Cao Xueqin wrote a long poem to thank Dun Cheng. Although it's been lost, we can imagine the scene that day from the poem Dun Cheng wrote in response. Worthless with me. Never can my sabre compare to Liu Qian's. Skinful after skinful we drink. Full of words is now my heart. In delight exclaims Sir Cao, his poems sharp as a knife. A year later, in 1763, Cao Xueqin's son fell ill. As a good father, he did everything he could, but still failed to cure the boy. Not long after, Cao Xueqin's son died. The tragedy struck Cao Xueqin all of a heap. Why had fate seen fit to unleash a cataract of misfortunes on his clan, his family and himself? Years of living in poverty and strenuous writing had eaten away at his health. Losing his son was the last straw. There was nothing for it but for Cao Xueqin to take to drink. It wasn't long before he himself became seriously ill. On his deathbed, perhaps Cao Xueqin had feelings of both joy and sorrow, just like when Bao Yu bade his father farewell. Or perhaps he was thinking of Bao Yu's words and his confused giggling when he parted with his family. I know it is time to go. Off I go. Enough of this foolery. It is over. On Chinese New Year's Eve, snow fell on the fragrant hills in Beijing. Born and bred in South China, Cao Xueqin was always fond of the northern snow. And now, at the age of 48, he forever parted from this world amid the whirling snowflakes. Left behind him was his wife in floods of tears, as well as a classic work that was to become the pride of the Chinese nation. Cao Xueqin's life spanned the reigns of Emperor Kangxi and Emperor Qianlong of the Qing dynasty, often referred to as the last golden age of China's feudal dynasties. He witnessed the country's best days and went through the worst hardships it had to offer, all the time somehow managing to turn all of them into a plaintive and yet beautiful elegy to a bygone era and its lost ideals.
难道我们阅读《红楼梦》流下来的眼泪，曹雪芹流下来的眼泪，难道仅仅是一首倒红的挽歌吗？也不是，就是说《红楼梦》一书啊，产生与封建社会的默契，但它对中国的新民主主义的文化产生了巨大的影响，在反帝反封建的五四运动中啊，所有的风云人物，你比如说风云人物这很多了，啊，那个蔡元培也好，胡适也好，这都是风云人物。还有旗帜性的人物，比如就是陈独秀啦、鲁迅啦，他们都对这部世界名著啊都非常熟悉。而毛泽东同志呢，终其一生都在阅读这部文学巨作。
Historical records show that the first 80 chapters of the novel, with comments by Zhe Yangjai, could be purchased at a price as high as dozens of taels of silver in markets in the years before Cao Xueqin's death. In 1791, littérateurs Cao Xueqin and Cao gathered the complete 120 chapters of the novel and reviewed and lightly edited them before printing them using a movable type system. In 1792, Cao Xueqin and Cao made further corrections and printed a second version. These two versions of the novel enjoyed the widest popularity with readers. But even before those two versions had started to circulate, the novel, with its irresistible literary glamour, had already secured its place in the hearts of Chinese literati. In the early 20th century, some scholars, including Hu Shi, put forward the idea that the last 40 chapters of the novel had been written by Cao. But as research into the novel went further and deeper, more experts started to believe that all of the 120 chapters of the novel had been written by Cao Xueqin, and that all Cao Xueqin and Cao had done was to perform necessary editorial tasks.
世界上的有名的那经典，还没有一本说是两个作者以上的，因为两个作者才气都那么高，这么了不得，怎么可能他们的风格一样？那如果一个高一个低，那个低那个一定学不来那个才高那个，后世会写的非常好，极好，很重要的两根柱子，一个是黛玉之死，一个是宝玉出家。前面80回写的再好，也是为这个东西最后准备的。
叙述是不可能的，不但给别人叙述是不可能的，给自己叙述也是不可能的。我也写过各种各样的长篇小说，你不要说续40回，你让我续半回也不可能啊。你写过是不同的时间、不同的地点、不同的心情。你如果这个书的原稿丢了，你自己再写一遍也不可能，除非你存盘了。
The following year, just after the second version had come out, a ship sailed from Zhejiang to Japan, carrying 9 sets of the 120-chapter novel. Two weeks later, the ship arrived in Japan. A dream of red mansions had begun its overseas journey. In the first half of the 19th century, Europeans, including missionary Robert Morrison, translated excerpts of the novel and introduced them to their countries. In the 1970s, the couple Yang Xianyi and Gladys Yang, and David Hawkes and his son-in-law John Minford, published their English translations of the novel, causing a sensation in the Western academia. In 1981, sinologist Li Chehua and his wife Jacqueline Alazeis published the French version of the novel in France. This was the culmination of 27 years' hard work. A French critic said its publication filled a harrowing void of 2 centuries, and that the novel seemed to have been created by the joint efforts of the French novelists Marcel Proust, Pierre Caralet de Marivaux, and Stendhal. By the end of the 20th century, full translation of the novel had been accomplished in the world's most widely spoken languages. The publications of these editions further solidified its status in world literature.
我常常讲这一段，僧是僧，道是道，儒是儒。一个和尚跟一个道士两个人在手牵手在一起，这是他设计是一个很美的贯穿，而这个很美的贯穿都要融到我们的生命底蕴里头来。
如果说这个地球上的树都没有了，突然发现某个角落还有一本《红楼梦》，那么中国人可以放心了。为什么？有《红楼梦》在，中华民族优秀的传统文化就不会毁灭掉。
大概50岁到60几岁的这个时间之内的，我跟《红楼梦》在一起，我自己的人生当中也是非常高兴的，非常有志的。怎么说呢？我的人生之书就是《红楼梦》啊。
我自己是学西方文学的，《红楼梦》看了一辈子，我就宣称它是天下第一书。曹雪芹最后是以天眼看红尘。
We began to translate the whole book together from 1970 to 1986. We worked together on that novel, and I even now today, in some 50 years later, when I go back to that novel, it's like I'm going home.
要说和《红楼梦》比肩的作品是没有的，这么大的影响，留下了这么多的话题。留下了一门非常引人注目的学问。前80回是天才之作，后40回也是天才之作。
我所居心，青埂之峰。我所有心，鸿蒙太空。鸿蒙太空，水与我有心，无水从渺渺茫茫兮，归彼大荒。水与我有心，无水从渺渺茫茫兮，归彼大荒，归彼大。